Thank you very much, Keith, and I want to congratulate everybody for joining us on a Saturday. As Keith was saying earlier, it is a little cool here in the Midwest, certainly in Chicago, but again, I applaud all of you for making the effort and taking the time out of your Saturdays to hopefully gather some information that will help you in your business as well as help you in helping others see the value and advantages of having a home-based business. As many of you, I'm sure, are quite aware of Robert Kiyosaki. He has written several bestsellers. His first, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has been on the New York bestsellers list for going on 7 years now. And in fact, was the only book to get on the bestsellers list that was self-published. And he's followed that up with the Business of the 21st Century as well as the Cash Flow Quadrant. And that is the topic that I want to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes on. I'm talking about the cash flow quadrant and what that really means to the average individual and why potentially there needs to be a mind shift from I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for a better job, and I want to be an employee to I'm ready to make the change and become a business owner. So some of you may be familiar with the 4 quadrants that we want to go over today. On the upper left, you have what's called the E quadrant, which is basically an employee. Obviously, fairly self-explanatory, where you are working for someone else or another entity, and you are basically in a job situation. You go to work, trade your time for money, and you get X numbers of dollars per hour or X numbers of dollars per year as an employee. The bottom left is self-employed, or the S quadrant, really has to do with what I would call specialists, right? Doctors and dentists, attorneys, accountants, small business owners, and mom-and-pop businesses. It may be a dry cleaner, someone who owns an auto repair shop. In this category, in the self-employed category, I will also include, as an example, franchise owners, right? Subway, even McDonald's. Now, you do see Ronald McDonald in the upper right-hand corner, and that represents McDonald's corporate. But as an example, if you were a franchise owner, I would certainly categorize you in the bottom left as a self-employed individual. Moving on to the B quadrant, the upper right-hand quadrant of your screen. Obviously, that is a business owner. And that's where we need to start looking at making that mind shift. And as a business owner, it can be from big business, Microsoft, GM, Coca-Cola, McDonald's corporate, all the way down to what really is applicable for us, which is that home-based business owner. And again, there's huge advantages in being involved in a home-based business and being a business owner. And we're going to get into that a little bit as we progress for the next 30 minutes or so. And at the bottom right, you're going to see the I quadrant, or the investor quadrant. And that is really where money is working for you, right? That's a very passive form of income. It is residual, and that's where money is really working hard for you. So let's take a look at the 4 different quadrants and what types of people may fall into these types of categories, or the 4 different areas. As an employee, or the E quadrant, the upper left, people are typically looking for safety, for job security, for benefits, and typically some form of retirement benefit as well. The problem, as we all know, and certainly it may affect each and every one of you, or some of you, or we certainly know someone that's affected, that job security and benefits is no longer there like it was several generations ago. So that E quadrant, there's a disconnect between what people in that quadrant are looking for and what the market will really bear out in today's economy and today's environment. In the S quadrant, or the bottom left quadrant, remember that was kind of the self-employed / specialist field. Those are individuals that have kind of the mindset, hey, I think I can do it better than everyone else. I can do it faster. So it's really people that have what I call almost an A personality and say, hey, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. Now, in this quadrant, although they may be a specialist, a physician, dentist, accountant, attorney, a small business owner, you have to come to the realization or understand that you're really an owner of a job and not a true business. And we're going to go into that a little bit more in a few slides. In the B quadrant again, in the business quadrant, these are individuals that are looking for smart people to surround themselves with. These are individuals that are really looking for a team concept, looking for systems, looking for networks to leverage and create residual passive income. In the I quadrant, that's where it is, again, very passive, almost completely hands-off, residual income, where money is really working hard for you. As we look at the different quadrants, certainly there are benefits and certainly disadvantages in looking to pursue one of the four different quadrants. As an E, or an employee, typically people work very hard, but there isn't that job security that maybe we had 2 generations ago. A lot of times, certainly people are finding themselves working well over the traditional 40 hours a week to make sure that they are being productive and trying to, I guess, engage in activities that will kind of set them apart from the rest of the field. If you look at the self-employed, I mean, I talked about that franchise, just touch upon that franchise. Think about this. In order for you to pursue a McDonald's franchise, as an example, you would have to be prepared to write a check for $1.2 million just to get on a waiting list with McDonald's. Subways are well over $100,000 a year, or $100,000 in franchise fees. So even in a franchise situation, you're going to have huge financial investments, which creates large debts. And a lot of times, as we know, for startups of businesses, insufficient funds are a huge reason why businesses do not last or do not survive past their first 3 to 5 years. On the right-hand side, which I think is very important, you have stability. As a business owner, you're going to have a little bit more time because of the fact that you're really looking to leverage the talents and the efforts of your team or your network of individuals, as well as on the investor side on the bottom right quadrant. Again, as I've stated a couple times now, that is a very, very passive form of income and residual income. Because of the fact that the money's now working for you, it's even beyond having your network or your team working for you as a business owner. Up top is something that we should certainly look at. On the left-hand quadrant here, we're looking at active income. Again, that issue of trading time for money. Whereas on the right-hand quadrant, which is where we need to be for true financial independence, that is going to create true passive income for you. Okay? So, let's see some of the advantages and disadvantages of each of these quadrants. As we look at the E quadrant or the employee quadrant, we're working for someone else. To me, in and of itself, working for someone else certainly is a huge drawback because many times, I guess, their desires and goals and what they're looking for may be different than what we're looking for. So as we look at what a business owner or a company or somewhat a different individual may be looking for, that may not be congruent with our goals and desires. Certainly, we're trading time for money. So I go to work for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 2,040 hours a year, and I get compensated or I get paid for those specific hours or trading time for money. For most of us that are in the E quadrant or working as an employee, we have limited income potential. And there's several reasons for that. The main reason why we do have a fairly limited income potential is you will never get paid your fair market value as an employee simply because the employer or the company that you're working for has to make a profit on you. So if your services or your skill sets that you bring to that organization is worth $100,000 a year in the open market, the company that you're working for cannot afford to pay you $100,000 per year because that's what they have to retail you for. So they have to hire you at a wholesale price, so to speak, right? So they need to make a margin or they need to make a percentage of profit. So that's why you're going to experience a limited income potential because they will never be able to pay you your fair market value and then be able to turn around and add their profit margins onto it and then go out and retail your services. Can you stop working and keep that income coming in? No, not for an extended period of time, certainly. So again, it's that time for money, right? You put in the time, X numbers of hours, and you're going to get paid X numbers of dollars. Okay? I say people in this area, because they're looking for that security, looking for those benefits, I don't think it takes a lot of courage to be an employee. But in return, which I think is fair, if you're in this quadrant and that's your mindset, you're not going to get rewarded, or that potential for rewards won't be there as they are as you shift towards the right side quadrants or the right-hand quadrants. Job security, we know today, and all of us certainly, some of us may be in that situation now, but all of us certainly know people that are either been displaced, out of work, and are looking for the next job. And to me, I guess it's a bit frustrating and knowing people that are looking for that next job after they've been displaced out of their last 3 jobs and they're still stuck in that same routine. Right? I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for the next job. I'm looking for a better job. And in some cases, they may be looking for a second job, trying to make sure that they can at least pay their expenses or pay their bills and make a living. Okay? Now, a lot of us are hearing that unemployment reports that the job market is getting better. You know, we hear reports of thousands and thousands of jobs being created and unemployment percentages are going down. But the reality is this, that the jobs that are being created are really minimum wage jobs. Right? So the middle class or the white collar middle class jobs that our parents and our grandparents enjoyed, that segment of the employment market is not growing and in fact is shrinking. And the jobs that are being created are really low level minimum wage jobs. So although on paper, yes, the numbers may show that we have created additional jobs or additional employment opportunities, the reality is they're not typically the types of jobs or positions that we would want to pursue. And many people talk about, hey, you know, a lot of our good jobs or technology-based jobs are being farmed out overseas, that are going to parts of the world where the labor costs are a lot less. And that is certainly true. But in addition to that, what we have to realize, many, many jobs are actually being erased or actually are disappearing because of technology. They're not necessarily being outsourced. They're flat out disappearing because technology can do what it used to take human beings to do. So yes, there is a percentage of jobs that are going overseas and being outsourced, but more importantly maybe, due to the advancements in technology, jobs are flat out disappearing. So we have to be aware of that and certainly recognize that as a very, very big factor moving forward and looking at our futures. Okay. The other thing, which if you are an employee, you have to consider, unlike even as a S quadrant, as a specialist or a small business owner, and certainly on the right-hand side as a business owner and or investor, you don't own your job, meaning your job can never be an asset, so to speak. because you can't transfer your job, you can't sell your job in the open market, and certainly if you stop working, it's not going to generate an income for you. So a job or being an employee will never fall into that asset category. There's a couple astonishing and quite frankly scary statistics that I ran across recently. If we took a snapshot of all 65-year-old males in the U.S. today, and I take males because we are not as good as females in kind of saving and kind of looking out for our future. But if we took a snapshot of all 65-year-old males today in the U.S., over 50% of those males actually had more money in their bank account when they were 18 than they do today. So think about that. The majority of 65-year-old males today had more money in their bank accounts when they were 18 years of age than they do today. So that is, to me, an absolutely astonishing statistic, and certainly I guess if you look at that E quadrant or that upper left quadrant, based on what you see on that screen and the things that we discussed, it does make sense to a certain degree on why that financial, I guess, difficulty that people are facing today, why that is. Okay. In addition to that, as an employee, on average, you're going to be looking at paying 30 to 40% of whatever your total gross income is in taxes. Okay, so from a tax situation, we talked about it a couple Saturdays ago, as an employee, you're not going to have all the additional incentives and deductions that you do as a business owner. So taxed at 30 to 40%. Back in 1943, Congress passed a law that stated, as an employee, your employer has to deduct taxes out of your paycheck first before giving you the remainder. Right? So starting in 1943, employees started seeing tax deductions prior to actually receiving their income. And many of you may have heard that phrase, and certainly when you sit down and really think about it, it's a frightening thought that as an employee, you're basically working between the months of January through May for free, because that is the segment of the year that's going to go to the 30 or 40% that you're going to pay in taxes. So from January to May as an employee, you're basically working for free, and then starting in June till the end of the year is what you have to live on, as well as hopefully begin to create a future for yourself. As a specialist or small business owner, okay, you do work for yourself, and that's a big plus and a big minus. You do work for yourself, meaning you're only getting in return the fruit of your own labor. Right? You're not leveraging a team, you're not leveraging a network. You are working for yourself, which is good, because remember, the mentality of this group is, hey, I can do it faster and better than the next guy, so if I want it done right, I'll have to do it myself. That's fantastic, but understand that your income, your financial success is directly related to only the work that you can produce. Here again, you're trading time for money. Right? A physician, an attorney, an accountant, they don't see a patient or client, there's no income coming in. Okay? So if a physician, a specialist, or even the small business owner or franchise owner, typically if they walk away from their business for a period of time, at the very least their income will decline, and in a lot of cases they won't have that income because, again, you're dependent solely on your own efforts in this quadrant. Again, limited income growth potential. Although people in this quadrant may earn more than the average American, think of it this way. If you are a physician already working 50 hours a week and you have a waiting room full of patients every single day, you've stacked them up, and you're doing kind of that hit and run medicine, is it possible for you next year to see twice as many patients to double your income? Probably not. As an accountant, are you able to prepare twice as many tax returns next year to double your income? Probably not. As a dry cleaner, are you able to clean twice the volume of clothing? Probably not. And even as a franchisee, if you own a McDonald's, a Subway, whatever it may be, are you able to serve twice as many hamburgers next year to double your income? Probably not. So it does present a limited income growth potential because it tends to be transactional. Okay? Transactional rather than passive and residual. So when you're dealing in a specialty or a profession where it is transactionally based, it's very difficult to have exponential growth for future years. You're really owning a job and not a business. Okay, so you own your job, meaning a physician, dentist, accountant, attorney, but it's not really a business, again, leveraging the efforts of many. And of course, you're functioning almost in a vacuum or in a bubble because you do have that loner mentality. So you don't necessarily have the support or camaraderie of a team because you're kind of a lone ranger. Okay? Now, this particular quadrant has the very least amount of tax incentives and deductions available. Okay. So people in this group are actually paying anywhere between 40 to 60% of their gross income to taxes. In 1986, with the 86 Tax Reform Act, Congress took away a lot of the tax advantages that people in this quadrant used to enjoy. So that's why during the 90s, you saw a period of time when a lot of these, I guess, quadrant specialists, a lot of these specialists ended up getting a lot of tax audits back in the 90s because of the 86 Reform Act. In the 90s, you heard of a lot of physicians, as an example, getting audited by the IRS because after removing a lot of those advantages that they had, the IRS wanted to make sure and enforce the fact that, hey, on average, these people would have to pay a lot more in taxes. So think about that as a physician, as a dentist, as a small business owner. A lot of times you're going to be up in that, hey, for every dollar I make, half of it's having to go to the IRS. Certainly not a best case scenario. And again, this is the quadrant that pays the greatest amount in taxes as it relates to a percentage of their income. Okay. Now, as we look at this, the left two quadrants, unfortunately, this is what we were taught to pursue as we were growing up. In school, by our parents, study hard, so you can go and find a good job, to find a job with a large company, and work harder than the next guy so you get promoted, and you'll have that security and all the benefits, and you're going to lead a comfortable life. The reality is that couldn't be farther from the truth in today's environment. So, as we were trained, as we were taught, as we were told to pursue the left-hand side of the quadrant, unfortunately, what we were told we can expect at the end of that journey is no longer there, and probably wasn't there for our parents' generation either. So think back to your parents. Were they able to come out of school, go work for ABC or XYZ Corporation and spend their whole entire adult career there and retire with a nice retirement benefit and everything else? Probably not. So it didn't work for our parents' generation. It may have worked for our grandparents' generation, but today still we're telling our children to pursue these two quadrants of being an E or being an S. As parents, we're telling our children that. As people involved in education, we're telling our children that. And we have to get out of this mindset of I'm looking for a job to I'm looking for the right opportunity. So let's see what happens as we start to make that shift over to the right-hand quadrants. Okay? As a business owner, you're really building an asset. And an asset is something that produces income or produces financial advantages. So as a business owner, you're really looking to build an asset. And as a business or an asset, typically you're going to have unlimited income potential because you're now beginning to leverage the efforts of many versus being a single specialist in the S quadrant or trading time for money in the E quadrant. Okay. Now you're getting into the situation of trading money for time freedom. So if you've created a business, if you're a business owner that has built an asset and that asset is producing passive residual income, now you can trade money for time freedom. That may be as simple as hiring somebody to take care of your lawn work. Somebody hiring a professional, hiring an accountant to take care of your bookkeeping and your taxes, right? Hiring assistants to take care of things that isn't worthy of your time, meaning your time is better spent enjoying that time freedom and or doing things that will further your business, in which case you're growing a bigger asset. I talked about it just briefly, leveraging the efforts of many rather than enjoying just the efforts of your own production. It is passive and residual, right? So it is a passive income on the right-hand side of our page versus active income on the left-hand side of our page. Well, again, trading time for money. And it's a team concept rather than a team of one. So there is that team support, there is that team momentum, there is that team camaraderie, and what I've spoken to in the past about, there is that force of majority, right? So if you have a group of people, a team of people that are like-minded and ready to pursue a singular goal or a common goal, it's much easier for us as individuals to participate and probably participate at a higher level in many cases than if we were a singular, I guess, entity or in that S quadrant. Okay. Now, as you get to the right-hand side of the quadrant, and we talked about a lot of the reasons why a couple Saturdays ago, excuse me, but the tax advantages and the incentives and the deductions that you have are much, much more flexible and abundant on the right-hand side than they are on the left-hand side. So businesses, if you're in that quadrant, even as a home-based business owner, you're going to pay on average from 0% to maybe a maximum of 20% as a business owner. So a huge difference, right? You're now talking about a passive residual income, unlimited income potential because you're leveraging the efforts of many, and yet you're paying a lot less taxes than you would be as an E or as an S. Okay. Lastly, the I's, or the investor. And I'm talking about really active investing in active assets, not necessarily investing in mutual funds, not necessarily buying GE stock and letting it sit for 10 years. I'm talking about almost reinvesting into an asset, which would be reinvesting into the B quadrant. Okay. It certainly has unlimited income potential because you are a true investor. And again, you're trading money for time freedom now. It is passive and residual. And now you've created a situation where the money is working very hard for you. And again, the tax codes are very, very flexible. You can expect to pay 0 to 20% if you are participating in the I quadrant and doing the right things. Okay. Now let's take a look at this. 95% of the population, unfortunately, is functioning in the left-hand quadrants, in the E or S quadrants. Now, 95% of the population is participating in the left-hand quadrants, but they represent only 5% of the total wealth. Now think about that. 95% of our U.S. population is toiling in this E or S quadrant, and they represent only 5%. So again, is that where we want to be? Is that where we want to spend our adult professional careers, our adult working lives in that left-hand quadrant? And for me, it's an astounding no. And look what happens when you get to the right-hand side or the right-hand quadrants. 5% of the population participate in this quadrant. Right? So 5% of the population right now truly understands and has internalized what it means to be in the B or I quadrant. And that 5% of the population currently represents 95% of the wealth. So given a choice, where do you want to spend your time, energy, and effort? Do you want to be in the left-hand quadrant, or would you rather be in the right-hand quadrant where you have access to, and people that participate in the right-hand quadrant represent 95% of the wealth? Okay. Now there's a couple of things that I want to point out. Again, the left-hand quadrants, to me, are people that are a little bit more entitlement mentality based, right? I am going to put in just a certain number of hours, but I want this. I want job safety, security, benefits, longevity, stability. And I say that's the wrong mindset. We need to get people to make that shift from an entitlement mentality to, hey, I want to be in an environment, meaning on the right-hand quadrants, where I'm going to be rewarded for my efforts, and I want to be on an incentive-based program, meaning the harder I work, the smarter I work, I want the ability to earn more income, to better myself financially, not only for myself, but for my family. I want an incentive-based platform. I don't want any caps. I don't want any limitations on what I could potentially earn and the time freedom that I may enjoy down the line. Think about this. On the left-hand side is that entitlement mentality. On the right-hand side, what are you really doing? On the right-hand side, you're creating jobs rather than looking for a job. Right? As you're building your team, as you're building your asset, as you're building your business, you are literally creating jobs versus people on the left-hand quadrants are looking for jobs. So again, to me, it's a very simple decision. I want to participate in the right-hand quadrants and not the left. Now, typically, people have to get into the B quadrant in order to create that financial independence to get into the I quadrant. Right? So B first and then I second typically is the natural progression. But however that timeline works out for you, you certainly want to be in that right-hand quadrant. I want to talk a little bit about the left-hand quadrant and how that's working out for the average individual. Many of you have heard me talk about the 40-year plan, so I'm not going to go into it in detail, but think about this. The people that participate in the left-hand side, after a 40-year plan, meaning their adult working career between the age of 25 to 65, 95 out of 100 are either still working, dead, or dead broke. Okay, so understand that. If you're working in the left-hand quadrants, out of 100 people after the 40-year plan, 95 out of 100 are either still working because they have to, dead, or dead broke. Okay? And a lot of that is due to the fact the left-hand columns will never be an asset. Where on the right-hand column, it is an asset and it is a passive residual income stream. So the left-hand side, paycheck mentality. On the right-hand side is the wealth mentality. So again, we need to consciously make that decision. Which side of the equation do we want to focus and do we want to function in? Left, paycheck mentality. Right-hand side, wealth mentality. Hopefully, for most of us, the left-hand side, we don't really want to look at that as an option. Okay? So again, we need to create that mind shift, not only for ourselves, but for the members of our team to create that mind shift to get from that left-hand quadrant to the right-hand quadrants. You know, I'll ask many of our potential prospects and potential team members, aren't you just sick and tired of being sick and tired? Aren't you just sick and tired of being as busy as you are, being broke? And that's because we kind of got sold this concept of wanting to pursue the left-hand quadrants, thinking that would provide us what we are really looking for. And we know statistically, and we know by life experiences, that the left-hand side does not provide us that. Okay? So we need to, again, make that shift, not only for ourselves, but help our team members make that shift to the right-hand side where we're truly building an asset and we can leverage. And leverage is such a powerful word that we can leverage the efforts of many so that all of us can achieve what we're truly looking for. I say, as I've said many times in the past, it's okay for you to work full time to pay the bills to make a living, but all of us need to start working part time to build our fortunes. We have a tremendous opportunity that with just 5 to 10 hours a week of laser focused concentration and dedication, you will certainly, in virtually every case, be able to replace your full-time income within 12 months. But part of that is having that commitment and dedication to make that effort for 12 months. As many of you have heard me say, commitment, the best definition of commitment I've ever seen, read, or heard is doing the things that you said you would do long after the mood in which you said them has left you. Right? So we have to have that commitment so that we can reap the rewards of the efforts that we're putting in today. I want you to ask yourself what you would change in your life if you had all the time and money in the world. If you had all the time and money in the world, what parts of your life or what things in your life would actually change? Would you still be driving the same car that you drive today? Would you be living in the same house that you live in today? Would you be dining out in the same restaurants that you eat at today? Would you be vacationing in the same vacation spots that you vacation in today? So ask yourself, what things would change if you had all the time and money in the world? And I say a lot of those changes are exactly the reason why you need to make that decision to take your first steps, to narrow that gap between the life that you're living and the life that you once imagined. Okay? So I hope you share this with the rest of your team. I hope this resonates with you. We absolutely need to get into the right mindset of looking for the right opportunity and not looking for the next job. And with that, we are exactly on the 40-minute mark. Once again, I applaud all of you for taking the initiative to take a little bit of time out on your Saturdays. Hopefully you found this information valuable and it will help you to continue down that journey of self-development and taking back control of your very own futures. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Keith, are you there? Have a fantastic weekend, everybody, and make it a great week.